Imagine waking up, and it's yesterday, every single day. That's the chilling reality of Virginia's nursery, a place where time itself has gone mad. If you ever find yourself trapped in its endless loop, this video is your only chance at survival, your escape manual to a reality that constantly resets. In 1883, a local legend tells us that outside of Roanoke, Virginia, nestled within the woods, was an old house with a nursery that existed outside of normal time. Children who entered the nursery were trapped there forever, forced to relive their worst moments over and over again. And whatever their greatest fears were, those would eventually drive them insane. But it was until the late 1990s that the first modern investigators would discover the horrifying truth behind the house's dark reputation. According to legend, the house was occupied by an elderly woman who never left the property and always seemed to be knitting. If anyone ever got close enough to the house to investigate further, they would always hear the sound of children at play. But no matter how long they listened, they could never quite place what it was that they were hearing. Sometimes they'd hear lullabies or nursery rhymes, but other times they'd hear screams, the kind that would make even a parent's heart stop. People also reported seeing shadowy figures in the windows of the house, and even more terrifying, shadowy figures standing right next to them on the road, beckoning with finger for them to follow. Anyone who accepted those invitations would get lost in the woods forever. In 1996, a group of friends decided that they wanted to find the house and put an end to the rumors once and for all. Armed with flashlights and a healthy dose of skepticism, they ventured into the woods to find the house. As they walked, they began to hear whispers and giggling echoing through the trees. Then they saw it, a faint light coming from between the trees. They pushed aside the branches and gasped at what they saw before them. There in front of them sat the old house, exactly as the locals had described it. Cautiously, they crept up to the front door, and one of them knocked. Before long, the door swung open and an old woman stood before them smiling. She invited them in, and they all sat down to have some tea. The whole time the woman kept smiling at them strangely and refused to answer any questions that they had about the house. Eventually, the group got up to leave, but as they passed the woman, she suddenly grabbed one of the guy's hands and dragged him towards the stairs. As he struggled to free himself from her grasp, she only smiled wider and said, "Don't worry, you'll have so much fun here." Then she dragged him away. Frightened, the rest of the group ran back to their car and drove away as fast as they could. They never looked back, but occasionally when they heard a child laughing in the night, they couldn't help but wonder if their friend was trapped in that house forever. The legend goes that the woman who lived in the house was the caretaker of sorts for the nursery. She had somehow discovered how to use infant souls as anchor points for temporal prisons. In other words, she would keep the babies conscious while they repeatedly died and were reborn, reliving their worst moments over and over again. Each baby existed in multiple time states at once, stuck between the womb and the afterlife. Some were born and died many times, living out entire lives in mere seconds. Others were condemned to repeat a single moment over and over for eternity. By tapping into the psychic energy of these babies, she was able to maintain her own immortality. Imagine, if you will, a timeline where every possible variation of your life plays out. Every decision you've ever made branches off into its own reality. Now imagine collapsing all of those timelines together so that all of the variations of yourself from every single reality are brought together into a single moment. What would happen is that all of your experiences, both good and bad, would intensify to unimaginable levels. This is essentially what happened to the babies in the nursery. All of the experiences that made up their young lives played out at once, causing them to age rapidly and die over and over again, reliving their worst moments until their minds shattered. When the investigators found the nursery, they found dozens of babies like this, stuck between the womb and the afterlife. Their bodies flickered between different ages. One second they might look like a newborn, and the next second they might look like an elderly person who had lived through centuries of recursive trauma. Their minds were completely gone, and when the caretaker noticed them, she only smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, hello, don't mind my little collection. They're just playing in the nursery. You know how babies are." She gestured towards the rocking horse and said, "Want to see something really cool?" As the investigators watched in horror, the rocking horse began to move on its own, rising up and down, back and forth. Then she turned to them and said, "Time is just another nursery rhyme. It's really quite simple. You just have to know how to care for your collection of temporal baby prisoners." That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to hear more stories like this one, stay tuned. We'll catch you next time.